Is this for him?
Thank you. Thank you, Mom.
That's fine.
Hold off 1 second.
Yeah.
We're good?
To the other side, but I'll wait.
Okay, all right. Here we are with Mr. Delano Stewart. It is Tuesday, August 13th, 2013, and we're going to talk about his memories, his recollections of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom from August 28th of 1963. Go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
Well, to me, it was a marvelous day, and I got up early, August the 28th of '63, because I wanted to be a part of, and I assumed that there would be a large number of people, so I've always been an early riser. I got up that morning and I turned on my TV, and NBC said that they thought that the march was grossly overstated and they didn't think that as many people would be there. I flipped the NBC and CBS, that was no cable then. So you had three TV stations who had negated it. And that didn't deter me. I got on the bus, and when I got off the bus, Mr. Hartman, you just mentioned it, you saw buses, because you know, at 6 o'clock it's sun's breaking, and you saw buses galore. And when I got off of the bus, people were streaming from every direction. They were white people and black people, people with yarmulkes on, priests, people with dungarees on. And then I recognized a couple of people. I had worked for a liquor store on 18th and T, which was a bad section of DC. But everyone was decorous. Everybody was kind. And it became very obvious to me. And you see people who would not pick up trash in a year, picking up trash, walking 2 blocks and putting it in a receptacle. And about that time, I heard the echo. Mahalia was at the Lincoln Memorial singing, and I know I was a half a mile, but the echo came and chill bumps broke out all over my arms. And I knew at that time that God was there. I was in the presence of a monumental movement, notwithstanding what I had just heard on TV. And it got better and more crowded and more crowded. And what's really interesting about that day, I did not see anybody who was out of line, who was not courteous, nobody was pushing. And as many people as there were there, it was just obvious that it was being touched by a higher spirit than any human being who was there. And notwithstanding the great speech of Martin and myriads of others, it was just a moment that in your life, if you were there, you would never forget, because it was the stamp of history was being emblazoned on your very soul. And so I will never forget it, and I was glad I was there. And people always say, well, why'd you go? Well, first of all, I was born in 1935. My mother taught and my father taught, and I always was very active. I knew American history, and I remember when I got into my teens, they had a book, it was a dual book, American Dilemma, and it was by the Madals, who was Swedish. But it talked about until America repaired, did something about its race problem, it could never achieve its greatness. And so I was probably 12 or 13 when I first read it. And I have a law partner who's a retired judge. I have never had a glass of water that was half empty. It's always half full. I'm an optimist. I believe that if you get up in the morning, you ought to get up to improve life. And I used to tell my children, get up, let's get up on Saturday morning. I didn't ask you who put the trash down, pick it up. It's your neighborhood, and this is your land. This is where you live. And when you travel up and down highways, this is your country. You're a part of it, and you have an obligation to do to use all your energies every moment of your life to uplift any and everything that you can touch. And that is what my philosophy has been then and now. I got 2 new knees and a new left hip, and I'm not as young as I once was. I can't outrun Usain Bolt, but I can run as fast as I can run. And that's what my philosophy is. I'm going to go till the very end. And I guess in a year and a half, I'll have 50 years as a lawyer. And when I began practicing, I was very adventurous, and everybody predicted my demise, and did not think I would last this long. But if I see June of 2015, I was in practice now 50 years, and the longest any black lawyer prior to that had practiced 15 years, or 16. And so I have been blessed. It's not perfect. It's my country. I have a good friend, Ron Huntley, who, when I made the fraternity back in 1955, he was over my Players Club, and then we got together again. I went to the service, he went to the service. And so when we finished law school, the 64 Civil Rights Bill passed. A lot of jobs were being offered. And I said, I'm going back to Florida. You're going back to the cotton wing patch. I said, let me make one thing clear. I was born and reared in Tampa, Florida. I did 3 years, 7 months, and 21 days to defend it. And I'm going back to die making Tampa better, because I cannot make Tampa better in New York. And all those jobs that have been offered me is what I want to do. Well, the philosophy of Harvard Law School, Charlie Hamilton Houston, who got out of Colgate, Phi Beta Kappa, was a lawyer. And he went back to take over the deanship. And Thurgood Marshall was one of his students. And his philosophy was, you are not here to protect the captains of industry and capitalism. Either you will be a person who seeks social justice, or you'll be a parasite on your people. And there is an interesting article he wrote, probably in 38 or 39, the need for the Negro lawyer. And what he talked about was the sparseness of black lawyers throughout the United States of America to protect people from all kind of injustices. And he did a chart, and that was the number, I think at that time when he wrote it, there were probably 5 lawyers in Alabama. And he said that if that person had a brand new car, he could not get around to 1/100th of the people he needed to serve. So because of him, restrictive covenants, we filed Shelley v. Kramer, which declared unconstitutional people who redline districts and wouldn't let you live there, and the court, but through his work and through the lawyers at Howard, and they worked on Brown, and I'm always intrigued about the magic language of the law and what it says and what it does. My first law partner, who lived a block down from me, S.J. Kenneth Rogers, Phi Beta Kappa, Nebraska Western, top 10% of the law school at the University of Michigan. And the day that Brown was decided in May 1754, I went over to his room, and he and his roommate, who happened to have been Costa Rican, were talking about the monumental impact of what Brown was going to do. But what I always remember, with deliberate speed, and so I was 17 at the time. And then when I came back to Tampa in 1972, Judge Crunchman appointed me to the integration of schools in Hillsborough County. So deliberate speed is not swift, right? It's still your imagination. And so, when you see legal words, the interpretation of it collide with the reality. The suit, President V. Ferguson, says separate but equal. And my dad was a high school principal, and I know that I would be with him, and you go right out to Hillsborough, and they're getting 100 Newton microscopes, you're getting the 1.5 used, and they say they were separate and equal. So even though things are being said, the action is so contrary to the actuality of it. So this is what you fight against, and you continue to fight against it. And I recall when I first started practicing law here in Hillsborough County. I'm the first black public defender in Hillsborough County in 1966. My dad had been assistant superintendent of public instructions in charge of accreditation, but he was the only black person who was professional in the courthouse when I began practicing. And then you go to court, and you got somebody who's been to 4 years of college and 3 years of law school, and you have to say, no, I'm not a Negro. Put your hands on your knee, flowers grow, Negro. So there was still that underlying effort to demean you, even though you're dealing with people who were intellectual. And it made me rethink a lot of things. I always considered that people who were attempting to thwart the progress of black people were people who were ignorant and untrained. But it's about power, and what people who have power do is that they will feed the masses the nonsense that this guy is inferior to you, so you can hate him, and they are responsible for your lack of progress, and which is happening. The Tea Party is doing that. But for women, but for Mexicans, but for Asians, you would be doing better. And so rather than to make it competitive and fair, and what irritates me about it, if you want a better country, then you compete, and everybody competes, and it's like the chaff and the wheat. It will separate itself. And so for somebody to make you want to have a stamp of inferiority, you do our country a disservice. And when I began in the case, and I said, look at the flag of the United States of America. I fought for it. And there's a flag of the state of Florida. Our obligation and duty is to be fair and to be the best people we can be. It has nothing to do with color. Color doesn't make you dumb. It doesn't make you smart. It doesn't make you strong. It doesn't make you weak. It's what the good master colored you with. And then I know this. Man always has a tendency to want to suppress something. If I were in Africa, it would be that I was a member of the wrong tribe and my lips were too tiny. If I were in Ireland, I was Catholic rather than Protestant. So if I was in the Mideast, I would be non-Jewish or Jewish. I'd be Iraq, and so man does not know how to accommodate the totality. But our Constitution and what we stood for, we the people, was supposed to be higher and better than that. And I say from the time that my forefathers stepped off the slave ship, we have been in engagement to be better, to contribute to, and to make America a better place to be. And that's what the March of Washington meant to me, and that's what my life means to me, that every day as an American citizen, I want to do something to make my country better for everybody. And I can remember very vividly my dear friend Judge Bucklew. When Judge Bucklew became a judge, and the guys would say they would say she shouldn't be there, and they wanted to disrespect her. And I know a good friend of mine who she put in contempt of court because he refused to accept the fact that a woman was on that bench giving orders to him. And so it is about people who believe that they are losing power. And it's sort of tragic. And I know it's not only just white men that do it. I nominated Senator Joyner, who was my law partner for years, to be the president of the Black Lawyers. And I got so many nasty letters that I sat and wrote from 2:30 in the morning to about 5. I cannot believe you who are in the forefront of civil rights and who fight every day for equality cannot make the discernment that racism and sexism are equally evil things that ought to be removed. So what happens, people will get imbued with power, and they will forget where they came from, and if it does not impact them directly, they cannot be cognizant of it. And that's what we have a duty to do, to make ourselves more cognizant of those people who are different from us and who experiences are different from us. And I think I was in 3rd grade, and I'd come home and I had all S's. S's were satisfactory. You got U for unsatisfactory. And I said I was smart, and my daddy thumped me. I have never forgotten that thump. He said, "Don't you ever let me hear you say that again. You're blessed and you're privileged. You got a mother and daddy with my master's degree. We both teach school. All our friends are trained. You're in the inner city school. You got every magazine that there is, and you have the audacity to say you're smart. You're blessed. And never take your blessings and whip with them. Take your blessings and live with them." And that's a lesson that I learned in 3rd grade. I have never forgotten it, and I never will, because that is what my ultimate philosophy of life is. And then I give a speech, and I go to Matthew 25. My uncle was coming. My uncle was a banker. He started a bank in Durham. He and my brother, he and his brother, my father, lost their parents when they were young. But they were not going to be deterred by that. And both of them were at Morehouse, and they both got out of Morehouse in 32. But they had their parents had left them a grocery store, and they had a little cleaners. And they did clothes on the campus. One was marked, the other was tread. We made your clothes look newly made. This is tread, the other is marked. We make your clothes look clean and sharp. They were hustling and trying to do better. So that is the philosophy that I come from every day, that you scratch up and you scratch out and you improve yourself and you do better. And so I'm fortunate that I've had very good people around me, and this community has been kind to me, and I have encountered problems, but I overcome them because it's just one person that does that. And I am a proud member of the Hillsborough County Bar. I ran for office after I got the requisite number of years, 5 years, and I won an office and held the highest number of votes. I've never been afraid to compete, and you cannot say that it can be done and keep me from doing it without me trying like hell to fail. So that's the way I am. I'm competitive, and I understand the life's reality. At the cross, there were 2 thieves, not the one on the right, but the one on the left, who had never seen a church in his life. He had never tithed, he never offered, he didn't sing in the choir, he didn't usher. But he confessed and was saved. So that goes back to my other underlying philosophy, which I think shreds and infiltrates and is embroidered in democracy. God gives us, He's prepared. All right? I put some oil in your lamp where when the bridegroom comes by, you see him. And then he issues you talents. There may be 2, 5, you don't bury them. But then there's an interesting transition. He gets to chapter 48. I divide up the nation, sheep on the right, goats on the left. But when did I see you, Lord? Well, if you didn't prepare with the talents I gave you to render the least of them, my brother, you haven't rendered them to me. Well, but when did I see you? Did you give me water when I was thirsty? You feed me when I was hungry? You visited me not when I was in prison. So what God apportions to us is not ours. And any of us who takes credit for what God does through us does not understand whatever gift you have can be. I could wake up in the morning, as I've seen some of my friends with Alzheimer's, and would not know my name. So whatever we got, they are blessings that we don't control. And you have to be ever appreciative, and you have to horn them, and you have to show appreciation, and then you have to reach out and lift, because that is what this country truly is about.
Mr. Stewart, when you were at the march, for you, it seems like if I understand you correctly, life is like the whole thing is one big package. It's a very philosophical journey for you. It's all kind of tied together, religious aspects, political aspects, economic aspects. Is that how the march meant for you?
And
You feel like it was all covered?
it certainly did. And not only that, I think every aspect of history, and I'm looking at the Trayvon Martin case, and you cannot look at it negative. Things occur sometimes to remind us how far we have not come. And nobody knows what happened because there were two people there one day and one alive. And so as a lawyer, I knew that first of all, you got a guy 45 days. It was obvious that the body politic, the people in Sanford, never wanted to prosecute Zimmerman because he wasn't arrested the night of the killing. And then you got 45 days in which people who should be having proof in the case are doing everything to protect Zimmerman. That's reality. So why are you going to get a prosecutor's hell when they were like salmon swimming upstream, man doesn't swim upstream, because they had a lot of stuff to overcome which they could not overcome. And then my kids called me the day and they were upset. I said, listen to me carefully. I bought each of you memberships, life memberships in the NAACP when you got 12. What in the hell have you done with it? You got to work on it every day. Don't cry when something happens. Work every day to make it better. And when I say that, there are persons who are black that will not sit on a jury because they're too lazy to, because they make excuses, and then when the verdict does not come back, then they want to blame white people. Well, where were you? So we all have obligations. Each of us has an obligation and a duty to shape it and to look at it and to analyze it and to make it better, no matter who we are. And it's easy to see somebody different from you. I have never lost a case because I was black. I've lost a case because I didn't have sense enough to overcome whatever the obstacles were. And that's the way I see it. And I never believed that I would lose much, and I didn't. And I won a lot when nothing was in that courtroom black with me and the judges rolled. But I found a way to win. And that's what that's what a lawyer has to do. And a good doctor. Sometimes I was a little silly. I have a good friend who I happen to have represented. I knew his mother and daddy, surgeon, the first black guy in town to ever be over the black lawyers of Hillsborough County. And you know, we exchange stories. And guy comes in, he's mangled, broken leg, broken right arm, pancreas shredded. And so he gives him adrenaline and he wakes up. He said, nigga, can you save my life? So all of what he said, he didn't mean. So you have to accept the reality, and we laugh about that. He was shocked. He wakes up and this big black man is over, but he was trying to get saved. So that's reality. So.
When you came back from the march, did you feel your friends, your family? What were the questions that they asked me about it? Did they want to know about the experience?
First of all, we have talked about it, and I was proud that I was there. And some things you cannot. I think that I know the English language pretty well. I got a pretty good vocabulary, but the totality of that experience is perhaps not describable because it was something that was interned in the marrow of my soul, that it was something that was truly theological, and what it was doing for me, and I believe it did for this country, that it lifted everybody's spirit, because there was nothing negative about I Have a Dream and the little boys and girls. It was embroidering America to be what it ought to be. That's what it was about. And so it was an experience that I relished, but as you said, I believe that the totality of life's experience ought to be lived in that way. And I understand that sometimes there's that. I laugh because the governor of Texas, who wanted to remove 3 things in the federal government, but couldn't remember what the hell they were. And so last night, Jay said, the governor says he's running for president again and he's going to Israel. And somebody said, the West Bank. He said, I bank at Wells Fargo, so. You know, so dumbness is not a trait of being blackness or whiteness. I mean, the last presidential election taught me that, and unfortunately, my good friend with the hat was a Morehouse graduate, and I sort of laugh about that. It's not, none of us are perfect, and we all have a obligation to do this. If you're strong, there's somebody to lean on you. If you're weak, you need to reach out and get somebody who's strong, because we're all in it together, and if we don't make it better, who will? And it's our obligation, each of us, to analyze and to look at it, you know, and that's what I say about justice, and why I will always participate. One of the great intrigues about life, I had 3 people who I studied for the bar with. One of them's a magistrate now. He was at the University of Michigan. John Van Voort was probably one of the smartest men that I've ever known, and about as smart as my first law partner, who was Phi Beta Kappa, and Francisco Rodriguez, who was also a very bright guy, and he was multilingual. And his father was instrumental in helping the Cuban game right. He was not trained himself, but he was a hell of an orator. And Michael Rodriguez was his son, who was the bandmaster, who was a very talented musician. But he instilled in Sylvia Kimball, who was the first black county commissioner, was the daughter of Francisco Rodriguez and the granddaughter of the father who was helping the Cubans. But we're going to get a cup of coffee. I'm 2 weeks from taking the bar. And we go down to the Tampa Theater building. Mr. Duff, who permitted me to come into his class, was fearful. And Oliver Maxwell, who was a circuit court judge who had been the lawyer for the Urban League, knew my father. So my dad was trying to help me get a bar review course, and integration was not anywhere near Tampa. And so Maxwell was induced to allow me to attend this class. So I was attending this class, getting ready to take the Florida bar. We go down to get some coffee. We order 5 cups of coffee. Glass cup, styrofoam cup to me, glass cup. And I looked at the guy who did that, and I was sizzling. And I came back that close now, because I started to throw that hot coffee and jump behind that counter. Because you say, why would this guy want to insult me or diminish my essence? But I wasn't going to not be a lawyer, so I turned around and got on the elevator. So all of my friends, they said, why'd you leave like that? I said, these are the kind of things you don't see, because you couldn't see it and you didn't understand it. And it's the same thing when I say that when I'm holding my mother's hand and she's buying shoes that she can't try on and she has to estimate it. I remember that. All of that, it is in my very essence of my soul. And that's why I fight. And I remember the day my mom and daddy drove through Gainesville every summer to Ann Arbor, Michigan to get their master's degree. And what did it cost us, how much money, time, energy, out of the way, I don't know. But you still got to overcome it. And so my daddy gets his master's and we happy, and there are no integrated, and there was no Outback, there was no integration, there was one black restaurant, and my daddy's best friend owned it, and we didn't want to go there. My mama fries a chicken, bakes a cake, and we go spread out something over in Polk County, have our little family picnic. And the siren comes on. Highway patrol. I'm looking at the speed limit. We aren't speeding, we're doing the speed limits. Boy, my mama said, my husband's not a boy, he's principal of school. Shut up, B. So now I got to hold my mama's arm, because my mama's angry and there's a pistol in the glove compartment, and I don't want us to die. on the highway, and but then he'd say, "Boy, what kind of shine is that in that thermos?" And my father kindly said, "Sir, I have my family with me and I don't drink." He let the lemonade out on the ground. So notwithstanding those kind of experiences, I will never be better. I'm gonna be better. But I am not unmindful that there will be men and women who take advantage of you for whatever reasons. And that's tragic, but that's reality. You know, and I know that there was somebody who was with Jesus and saw everything that Jesus did, and he betrayed him. So you cannot make men, humans are not perfect. They are forgiven. And you know, everybody cannot be Nelson Mandela. Mandela was a hell of a guy. I love Mandela because Mandela believed like I believe. If you ain't willing to die for it, then it's not worth doing. And when he said to that court, as I say it in the Pulitzer Prize book of this year, it's Devil in the Grove. And it's about Sheriff Willis McCall, who was up in Central Florida, who was a cruel man. And it was not the color. He was cruel to anybody. He used his power improperly. So in 1965, I'm in Tavares trying a case. The NAACP got me to try this case. And the people were frightened. I knock on the door. I'm here to represent such and such. NAACP, get off my porch. Sheriff Willis McCall got 9 black Doberman pictures with gold teeth, and they trained to eat Negroes. And that's just how they feel. And I mean, they were trembling when they said that. So this woman is in jail. She came to visit her mother. She was trying to park, and the lady that owned the thing, so to get her BA out of the space. You know, she was a white woman of privilege, and they put her in jail, and she had no bond. And you know, which is ridiculous, a traffic matter. So I'm trying the case. I'm getting ready to cross-examine the lady. Will you tell me? She won't say a word. I say, Your Honor, I'm an officer of the court. My bond number is 078165. They don't mention 6565. So this time, the bailiff pulls his pistol up and down in his holster. I said I had peripherally viewed the bailiff attempting to intimidate me. I did 3 years, 7 months, and 21 days in the United States Air Force. I was willing to die then, and I'm willing to die now. Tell her to answer my damn question. So he declared a mistrial. But that is the kind of fight that we had to fight. And that's the kind of fight that we'll continue to fight. It will not make me hate anybody, because hate is a negative influence over any person's life, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try to correct, and I'm going to try to make better. And it takes time and it takes energy. And I organized Tampa Organization on Black Affairs to celebrate Martin Luther King. I organized the George Edgecombe Bar Association after my first law partner became the first black state attorney. And when he got to be appointed, E.J. Senior's appointed, there was a judge said, if you put that nigga in my court, I'm going to dismiss every information indictment. So we went and found another judge who will allow him to do it. So you always overcome negativity. And I remember very vividly when Edgecombe was being elevated to be a judge. He's become a judge now. And he has a courthouse named after him. But there was a judge who was supposed to move his stuff around so Edgecombe could share his thing. They were going to divide it up into 2 courtrooms. He called me and said, Dale, my stuff's been sitting out here 2 weeks. And no such a mention the judge hadn't moved it. So I went to see the chief judge. I said, Judge Patton. I said, Judge Patton, I'm a member of this bar, and Edgecombe is a judge with the same power conferred by the 3rd Amendment of the Florida Constitution with its power. And I don't want to sue. I'm a member of this judiciary, the 13th Judicial Circuit, and it's not fair And he said, don't worry. And he called the church. He said, not tomorrow, but right now, I'm sending the people to move it. So there are always good people who will stand up and who have strength, and you have to find them, and you have to keep overcoming things. And so that's what the march was about. That's what I'm not going. I went to the Million Man March, and I have considered going to the march on the 28th, but I'm not going. I've done my marching, and I'm not going to try any more cases. And people say, well, why aren't you trying any more cases? I said, well, Tuscanina is a conductor, so there's a lawyer conducts. And when Tuscanina has a baton and he's trying to coordinate the flutes and the reed sections with the oboes and the violins and the bass, and he wants allegro and pianissimo, but if he has to put down the baton and go to the restroom, he loses his coordination. So I ain't trying to go cases.
Mr. Stewart, thank you for that. I have Mrs. Athioli outside, and on that note, do you want to say anything with that?
Yeah, just really quickly, were there any particular moments from that day, either interactions with other people there, or a speech, or just a feeling? Was there anything like particular that's like still ingrained in your mind? Or
One thing. I Have a Dream speech was a classic, phenomenal ability of a good preacher to reach everybody there. And I will never forget that. Now, I got in the most vitriolic arguments with classmates. There was another speech that I thought was technically better, but it was not as moving because it was not delivered in the same way. It's the same thing. I had a roommate at the University of Michigan who was a hell of a pianist. He was a brilliant guy. And we went to see Dave Brubeck. And he went down in the lobby. He knew every note, but he did not have the feelings. And it's that, you could get one person to take a tune and do a certain thing with it. So that speech was so moving in terms of the dynamics of what a preacher could do. I mean, and it was obvious that it was delivered from the essence of his soul and his love for a country. And so I will never forget that. But the whole day was just such a monumental thing. It probably would best be said it to me was America at its best trying to get better.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you so much, Mr. Stewart. Thanks so
See,
much.
I could talk a little bit.